So my name's Reuben. Good afternoon, all. I'd like to also, as well as keeping this pleasantly short, I'd like to try and keep it relatively interactive, if that's all right. So I have a few questions I'd like to ask you all as we go through this idea of articulating and managing your personal brand. So my first question to you is this, my friends, and please do use chat. Yeah, Purusha's just popped out there. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in what people are saying and thinking about you at this very moment in time, ladies and gentlemen? All right. So you're here, we're chatting, you're listening, we're engaged. Outside of this space, the people know you, they think about you, they talk about you. Scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you know what is being thought and said about you? 1 being no idea, 10 being I could get it word for word. So Judy's gone 7, Andrew's gone 6, Purusha's 7. Yes, it always tends to be in the middle of this little section there. It's quite good. So we all feel, on the whole, there's a relative confidence, I would suggest, from those numbers in terms of what people are thinking about. Yes, Zach, the positive piece is an interesting one and something we'll come on to in a little while. So that was my first question. It's a first question generated by I think probably one of the most famous famous quotes about personal brand. It's from Jeff Bezos, who I'm sure has all delivered you things, not personally, but has all delivered you things in the last couple of weeks, because he's the founder of Amazon, therefore the richest man, I think, in the world, certainly there or thereabouts, who said of personal brand that it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. Okay, so I don't know how many of you heard that before. To me, that's a lovely starting place for any discussion around personal brand, why it's important, what the value is, all that kind of stuff. And indeed what it is, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. Okay, so I'll just let that settle and register a little bit. I actually think it misses or certainly avoids quite an important part of personal brand, but it's a very good starting place. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about what people say about you when you're not in the room. Okay, my next question to you is this: if you could choose an animal or animals to represent you, what animal or animals would they be? Okay, and that's a genuine question. It's questions quite often in interviews. So I'm going to let you think about that a little bit. And I do, because one of you is going to share. You're going to put your hand up. Judy's gone early with otter. So I'll tell you what, while you're thinking, this is imagination, okay? So you can gene splice. So for instance, my animals would be monkey dolphin. Okay, so I'm Reuben. I'm a monkey dolphin, and I say monkey dolphin because I think what I think it represents is my curiosity, playfulness, and creativity, which is kind of monkey-like, but also dolphins are quite playful as well. And also the dolphin piece is they're considered to be some of the more intelligent creatures, shall we say? So I like to think I'm relatively bright, and I'm also I kind of like I like groups and working with people. I quite enjoy collaboration, shall we say? So I thought monkey and dolphin were quite good for me. So they're mine. Judy's an otter. Judy, on the basis of that, I don't know whether you want to change from being an otter, but I'm loving the otter. So I'm not going to ask you to share, okay, to everyone, but I am going to ask one of you, or rather, I don't want you to share on chat, but I'd like one of you who doesn't mind sharing what their animal was, not why, but what it is. So does anyone want to volunteer themselves? You can put your hand up or say yes on chat if we can't see your video. I've shared. I've put myself out there, ladies and gentlemen. Who wants to share? Yes. Oh, well, Zach's up for it. Love it. Right, Zach. I'm going to unmute you because I think I can. I have the power. And Zach, all I want you to do is say what the animal or animals are, and everyone else. Number one, silently applaud Zach and say thank God that was him and not me. And secondly, I'd like you to write into chat what that animal or animals you think says about the lovely Zach. Does that make sense? So your feedback on Zach's animals in chat, please. Right, Zach, off you go. What's your animal or animals?
Well, now I know people are going to feedback about it. I might change the animal. So it's a brindle, long-haired Irish wolfhound.
A brindle, long-haired Irish wolfhound. Love it. I love the specificity. Right. So Zach's a brindle, short-haired Irish wolfhound. No, long-haired. Sorry, long-haired. Brindle, long-haired Irish wolfhound. What do we reckon that says about Zach? Sporty, complicated. He's got a killer instinct. What else? Any other thoughts? Works in a pack. Do you see? Isn't this nice? So we're starting to get a flavour of what that means, people. What people's takeaway is. So I'm going to unmute you again, Zach. What do you think of that? What was your plan? What was your hope that the long-haired Irish wolfhound, the brindled long-haired Irish wolfhound, would say about you?
Pretty much the exact opposite of what everyone else has said.
So no, come on, what was it supposed to represent in you?
Yeah, very occasionally elegant, but also perhaps slightly dopey, stupidly loyal, and I will run fast if there's something to chase.
Lovely. Well, what a lovely way of starting to get to know Zach a little bit. So thank you very much for that, Zach. But also what that does, and again, double thank you, because that's quite an ask. I mean, I know you know some of these people, but putting yourself out there in front of people, that's hardcore stuff, my friend. However, what's nice, yes, and as Candy says, thank you very much. What's nice is you start to, what this as an exercise does, I think, is get to the heart of personal brand and some of the challenges at the heart of personal brand. Because on the one side, as Bezos says, personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. On the other hand, the other obvious question is, do you like what they're saying about you when you're not in the room? Because they're both valid and they're both important. And it's the balancing of the two. It's the connection of the two. It's the alignment of the two that I think is really interesting and really important when it comes to how we all think about ourselves, the impact we have on the world around us, and on the basis of what we're talking about today, our personal brand. Because in my honest opinion, if you can get that alignment right, so not only know what you'd like people to say about you when you're not in a room, and also get to a position whereby people are saying that about you when you're not in the room, then in my honest opinion, you're in a very, very good place to have a very successful career, to find yourself doing things and in a role where you feel incredibly fulfilled, where you are genuinely thriving, and when you are producing amazing work. And I don't know about anyone else here, but that's a position I'd like to find myself in. And it's a position I, on the whole, fairly regularly do find myself in. And I genuinely believe that that's partly because I hope at least what I'd like people to say and think about me is what they say and think about me. There is an alignment there. And what I'd like to spend the rest of, or certainly the next 10 minutes, because I'd love to leave some time for questions, is just talking a little bit more detail how you can make that alignment happen. Because you might think, and rightly so, I mean, Zach couldn't really do much about our responses to the brindle long-haired Irish wolfhound. He was at the mercy of our understanding of the worlds of dogs. But interestingly, even with that, we saw dogs. So you had loyalty, and you had working in a pack and stuff like that. All things we know about dogs. So we could have probably, certainly Zach could have probably guessed there'd be a loyalty element to it. So there is a little bit of, you've just got to, fingers crossed, touch wood, that people are going to think the right things about you. But equally, and my point in this is that once you do know what you'd like people to say about you, I think there's a lot more that we can all do to make sure that people actually then start thinking and talking about you in that way. And that's kind of where I'd like to focus the bulk of the rest of our time. So that all makes sense, by the way, good people. Give me a rousing nod and a double thumbs up from Perusia there. Lovely. Thank you, Kay. Kay, by the way, I'm very impressed with already your personal branding around you. That's see, we're all nodding. We're all going, oh, wish I'd thought of that, as I am to a certain extent, but we'll come on to that in a moment. So look, here's the thing. There are two sides to this personal brand business. One of which is, what do I want people to say about me? And the other is, how do I make sure that they do say that? So the first bit is interestingly, I think, where when a lot of people think and talk about personal brand, they kind of forget this bit. which is all very well trying to control what other people are saying, but actually, what do you want to be known for? What do you want to your brand to be about? And that word brand, I think, is very important. Now, I know Vicky, like myself, is a marketeer, and I'm sure many other people on this session are marketeers as well. And you know, talking about personal brand, that word brand is really important because, again, my own take on brand is it sums up something's best bits. So that little Apple logo sums up loads of things about an organisation that's creative, that looks beautiful, that is high end, that is really simple to use and elegant and all that kind of good stuff. It's summed up in that one word, Apple. It's summed up in a little logo that is an apple. So if we're thinking about how that relates to us, this idea of it being a personal brand is how do we sum ourselves up? How do we sum all of our best bits up? Because that's the piece that, quite frankly, I would like people to talk about and to think about when it comes to me. So that said, then the next question I have, so this is the third of my questions today. And again, this time you are all going to have to write something in chat about yourself. You're going to have to be very vulnerable, put yourself out there, is what are you good at? What are you, genuinely, what are you, even more than that, what are you really good at? What are you great at? What's your superpower, my good friends? Because this is what this is about. Now, it's not necessarily an easy question to answer. I doubt very much if, rather like the animals, I said, put your hand up if you want to share what you're great at. I don't think there would have been I don't think everyone would have been clamouring to share. Partly because it's a little bit arrogant, isn't it? What? Well, I'm quite good at stuff, really. I'm just a nice chap. That's it, really. Whereas actually, this is kind of asking you very specifically, what are you good at? What are your strengths? What are your superpowers? Loving this. So Craig's superpower is bringing a team together. Candice is helping students. Is it just students, Candice, or helping people? Are you able to go broader? Andrew, setting myself a goal, and Andrew gets it done. We're going to call Andrew the postman, because he always delivers. You see, there we go. That's lovely, Maxine. Listening. What my superpower is listening. And again, I say superpower. You've all got superpowers. We're all good at lots of things. And part of the thing that I really love about talking and thinking about personal brand is it offers anyone an opportunity and a kind of excuse, really, to think about, actually, what is it that I'm good at? What is it that I bring to a party? Because, and this is where it comes back to my previous point about, I think that alignment of what you want people to say about you and what they actually say about you, if you can get those aligned, to me, that's a huge step in the right direction of having an intensely fulfilling career. Because if your personal brand is made up of your best bits, and it's not because you're trying to pretend you don't have bad bits, but if you think about the apple, you can have bad, but you can have stuff you need to work on. But brands out there in the real world, out there in the commercial world, they don't have as part of their brand architecture, we are Apple, we are creative, we are aesthetically pleasing, and we are incredibly bloody expensive when you lose one of those little wires that comes with it. Right? They don't have that in their brand. We know this as Apple users. When you do lose one of the little wires, it's incredibly annoying and very expensive to replace with an Apple product. But nevertheless, they've made sure that their brand is all of the good stuff. So you're allowed to have stuff that you're not great at, but that's not what's in your brand. Your brand is about is your best stuff. So it gives you the opportunity to really think about what you're good at, what you bring to the party. And then having done that, and this is where I'm going to do a little bit of brand building that we can all do when it comes to Zoom. I'm going to change my name to what I consider my brand is. So I consider that I am a passionate creative collaborator. That's what I believe my brand is. Now, as I said, I've got a little bit of history with Vicky. So Vicky's known me slightly longer than I think everyone else on this particular call has. Certainly the people I can see, I put names with faces. I'm not very good with names on their own. So I'll leave it up to Vicky, and she needn't say anything if she doesn't want to say whether when in our working lives, I've come across as a passionate creative collaborator. But equally, everyone else on this call, you've known me for approximately 17 minutes. So in those 17 minutes, have I come across as a passionate creative collaborator? In fact, here's the thing. I'm old enough and ugly enough now to cope with your feedback. I'm a passionate creative collaborator. That's what I reckon. Yes, I was going to say. Now, Candace, there's 3 words there. Definitely passionate. Yes, I over-index on passionate. I think 3 words there. Passionate creative collaborator. Out of 3, how am I doing so far? Passionate creative collaborator. You guys have known me for at least 17 minutes. Vicky's had the unfortunate personal tragedy of knowing me for a little bit longer. But yes, and I'm quite happy for you to say 0 out of 3, quite frankly, because again, this is your perception, and technically I can't. Yes, you see, thank you, Kay. So I seem friendly and confident. So that's not necessarily how I, at the core of my brand, I want to be known as a passionate creative collaborator. But friendly and confident is not a bad start for me. And again, as I'd like to come on to talk about for the final few minutes, there's quite a lot I think that I can do to help Kay and others have even more of an idea, even more of a specific idea of what brand Reuben is about, that I am indeed a passionate creative collaborator. So you've all said, yes, you come across 3 out of 3, 10 out of 10, pretty much, at least you're very passionate. So what's helped, in your opinion of me, what's helped me come across as being particularly passionate? Let me know in chat. How have I done that? How's that come across? Thank you very much, Vicky. Yes, the energy, the voice work, so that's a big part of it, and it is a big part of me. And I'm not putting it on, as Vicky knows. I am kind of a little bit like this. I doll myself up a little bit for this because you've got to. But the point is, I've tweaked my brand for the context. I would say yes. The hair. Now the hair's an interesting thing, isn't it? Not the greatest hair in the world, but it's mine. Okay, and I'm just saying, a man of my age with his own hair. I'm just saying. However, the point is, I don't wear it long just because, hey, I want to be seen as a passionate creative collaborator. I like my hair long. As Vicky will tell you, I've had long hair pretty much all of my life. It's also partly because I've got a fat face and it makes my face look thinner. However, that aside, it helps my look. Now, I hope I've also dressed as a passionate creative collaborator. I didn't look like I had a video call earlier on today with some people who know me very well. So I didn't bother putting my passionate creative collaborator clothes on. But I also, and Parush will know this, I've turned my video camera a little bit. So I could have had this one. Now that, I would argue, as a background, doesn't necessarily make me look like a passionate creative collaborator. Looks like a bloke who's got files in his office. Okay. However, if I make sure that it's this way around, particularly there when I've got a nice little bit of artwork behind my show, then all of a sudden, and if you look carefully, there's my record collection behind me as well. So you're thinking, oh, a man is into his vinyl. That sounds quite passionate and creative and collaboratory. So my argument is, because I'm conscious of what my brand is and what I would like it to be, I'm conscious of how I would like people to think about me, I'm a little bit more conscious of the context that you see me in. As Kay's very conscious of, let's promote the Kay Ransom brand throughout this. Let's not bother with a fancy Zoom one. Let's make our own that gives Kay's brand out there. And again, I salute Kay and her brand there. And again, Purusha changed her name to being Motivation in Isolation. So we know she's the boss. So there's lots of little things you can do to make sure your brand's coming across. But face-to-face and context is one thing. The other thing, and this is, I think, particularly pertinent for the world as we know it, the new normal that is either lockdown or even when the lockdown's starting to be eased, I still think, and I don't know about anyone else, I still think that the world has fundamentally changed now. And I think a lot more of the interactions we have, a lot more of the connections we have with people will be online, will be virtually, will be remotely, because actually it's really easy. And I haven't had to get in the train or in a car for ages, and I've quite liked that. And I still feel I've connected with people because we can use video. So I think the world will change so that a lot more of our interactions will be virtual, and which means that your brand will be a lot more remote and virtual in the future. I mean, it is now anyway, because the first time you meet someone, if you're going to meet someone for the first time, rather, what's the first thing you do before you meet them? Yeah, international sign of searching. you'd Google them, wouldn't you? Or you go to LinkedIn and say, who's this person? Yeah, as Judy says, Google. So yes, it's you go to LinkedIn, you Google them, you'd find out a little bit about them. So already our brand exists in a digital, in a virtual, in an online space. And so my question to you is, when was the last time you Googled yourself? Judy, you said Google. When was the last time you Googled yourself? Vicky, Nicola, Kelly, Craig, the postman, I love that. Tom, Becky, Candice, Caroline, Maxine, Kathleen, FM and Matt, and indeed Parusha. When was the last time you Googled yourself? Kay, when was the last time you Googled yourself? Yeah, so a few times this year. Today, excellent, because that keeps you on top of the brand. So that's something you can do. And again, I'm going to screen share for the final little bit of this, if I may, because my point about a lot of this is that, you know, we are much more in control of how our brand comes across. So for instance, this is my LinkedIn profile. Now, until the start of lockdown, it was a little bit more creative, passionate creative collaborator. But as lockdown started, and most of my business, a lot of it's presentation coaching, a lot of it went off a cliff because, funnily enough, people weren't going to large international face-to-face events anymore. Who knew? But I suddenly realised this was my time, my downtime. This was actually time for me to really focus on what did I want this channel to deliver for me? What did I want the LinkedIn channel to promote about my brand? And it was actually a little bit more specific than the passionate creative collaborator, because I wanted LinkedIn to become quite an important part of how my brand was out there. So I endeavoured, I'm going to stop screen sharing there a second. So I endeavoured to change my brand. What I also did though, and this has been going on for a while now, I'm going to share my screen again. This time I'm going to share my email. I hope you can see this. So this is what you get when I email you or I respond to an email that you've sent, which I hope you can see that. So again, I'm not saying this is the most brilliant piece of personal marketing, of brand marketing, but what I like to think is my email signature, I've thought about it a little bit, and I wanted to put something out that was useful for my clients, not too try hard, but again, showed a little bit of how I was different, how I was hopefully a little bit creative or a little bit, and I hate to use this word, amusing in my own little way, but not in a try hard way, in a useful way, but just a little bit different, rather than having something that everyone has. And again, we can all do that. I can do that. My last point is, the last screen share I'll do is back to my Google Chrome screen, which is this. And again, I hope you can all see this. Out of offices, my friends. Everyone sets them when they go off on holiday. Not that we're going on holiday anytime soon, but when we want to be off the grid for a little bit, you set yourself an out of office. Now, I've given it a challenge to myself because it's on brand, because it's brand Reuben, and I'm a passionate creative collaborator. I want to try and make my out of office as on brand, as on message, as me as I can. So this was my last one. That was the October bank holiday last year. Me and the family went off to Corfu. And I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not saying it's the best poem ever written. I'm not saying it's a particularly talented example of a limerick. But it did quite a nice job, I think, in just, again, setting me as someone who's a little bit different. So Reuben has gone to Corfu for a week and his family's gone too. So now you know why. If he doesn't reply, it's not because he doesn't like you. It doesn't really scan well at the end. But that aside, it kind of worked quite nicely, I hope, in terms of promoting my brand. So that really is how I'd like to leave this, to leave a few minutes for questions at the end, is that I hope that's made a certain amount of sense. And I also hope that, because I don't think anything we've talked about is revelatory. I don't think I've said anything that you probably didn't kind of know, but hopefully in deciding to invest half an hour or so in this little session, it's given the opportunity to maybe just press pause on all of the other demands that are made upon you and spend a little bit of time thinking, actually, how am I coming across outside of me in the room? And am I doing it in a way that helps other people get me? In a way that is you being generous with your brand is you helping other people get you, and therefore helping other people come to you and asking you to do the work and the kind of stuff you want to do. And that's got to be lovely, because then you're doing stuff you really enjoy, stuff you thrive at, and stuff that really showcases your skills. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I'd like to end. And I would like to open it up. If anyone has any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them. Or now, if you just like to go because you want to start fiddling with your brand, then as long as that's what you do, that is also fine.
Ah, Reuben, thank you very much. That was really, really useful. Thank you very much. Yes, if anyone wants to ask any questions, either click on the participants button at the bottom and you can either raise your hand, we'll unmute you, or drop something into the chat. One of the things I'm really curious about is quite a few people work for a company and they obviously have their own identity within that organisation, and then they have their own identity as well. Would you say that your professional brand should be the same as your personal brand?
That's a great question. Thank you. This is a question that kind of comes up a lot with this. The simple answer is you shouldn't. I don't think you can have two different brands, fundamentally different brands. I think you can. There's a version of your brand that works better in one domain, and a version of it that's in the other. But they should come from the same place, because otherwise, and branding, as anyone in marketing knows, is about consistency. So to me, if I meet you at work and you're one kind of person, you're one brand, and I meet you outside of work and you're a very different brand, then I'm going to think, well, which is the real you and which isn't? So I think it's the same thing. I think you can, so as an example, so I'm a passionate creative collaborator. I run brainstorms. I do lots of team building stuff. I do lots of facilitation that plays to that professionally. Now, obviously, I don't do that outside of work. But when me and a group of my friends from school all got to one of the big birthdays a few years ago, rather than buy each other presents, partly because we're blokes and we don't do that kind of thing, we decided to have a pot, and you all chuck money in the pot, and we buy from us all one really relevant and fun and personalised present for each of us. Guess whose idea that was? Guess who organised it? And guess who did a lot of the present buying? All because those kind of things are, those kind of things are the kind of thing that a passionate creative collaborator will do. So they're very different things, but I think they're showcasing the inherent similarity of both brands in and outside work. Does that answer your question, Purusha?
Yeah, it does. I think it's really interesting what we're going through now, where everybody is getting an insight into people's personal lives. If you met somebody in a professional capacity, you would always meet them at a venue, a meeting hall or something like that. Whereas now, because we're all at home, unless you're Kay with this amazing background, everybody's sort of, as you say, having a little sneak peek into each other's lives. And so I think you're absolutely right. What is coming is much more of a kind of a personal connection, and even though it's on a professional basis, we're all starting to learn something about the other person.
You know what? I think that's a really good point. And that, again, to your point, that makes it even more important that your brand has consistency across everything you do. And it's not saying do something different, be someone you're not. It's just saying kind of be happy with actually how I'm acting in this way. It's just a slightly different version of how to act in that way. And I think that was partly your question about the friendship piece as well.
So we've got some questions on the chat coming in. So Kay's asking, she finds her own brand and herself seem to blow into one. Clients become friends and friends become clients. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think so. And again, Purusha, to your point, and it's going to happen more and more. And I think if you've got a good relationship with your client, that's always going to happen anyway. And that's the thing. It's like, what you don't want is when you do become friends with a client, you become someone completely different. Because then I'll be thinking, hang on a second, who did I really know? So I think that's a great thing. The authenticity piece, Candice. Yes. Fitting it into context, I think that's really, really key. And there's a phrase I've stolen from another piece of content I've been involved in called skillful authenticity. And I really like it. It's quite a poncy phrase, if we're honest, but it speaks to, I think, what you're talking about there, Candice, in terms of so for instance, I am going to tweak myself a little bit for this particular context. I'm going to dial up the passion because it makes more sense to. It's difficult a little bit to make this as collaborative as I'd like it to be. So I will tweak. So it's still authentic, but it's just a slightly, it's how you arrange your dials, I suppose, is the best way I can explain it. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, Candice, but it is making, what bit of me do I want to show? Which for this context, what's the best bit, what's the most valuable to me bit of my brand to be able to articulate. So yes, I think it's a good shout. Any other questions at all? Any other thoughts?
So the authenticity piece, it's about, I think what we were talking about earlier before everyone joined the call, but it's about walking the walk and talking.
Yes.
You are, whatever you decide you are, is that actually has to be an element of truth in that, because it's incredibly difficult to keep that up, as we kind of see with celebrities and things all the time.
Yeah. And even with ourselves, again, if your first interaction with someone isn't an authentic version of yourself, then that's what you have to live up to for the rest of your relationship with that person. Otherwise, as I said, they're going to think, hang on a second, what's changed? What's gone on? He was all exciting and passionate and creative, and next time I met him, he was all in beige looking at spreadsheets. What's going on there? I don't follow. I don't get it. So, it's, and again, what I have to say, what I love most about all of these conversations, all of these questions and stuff, is that I don't know about anyone else, but I'm kind of listening to this thinking, good, that means I don't actually have to change anything at all, really. And I think that's my biggest piece of this. This shouldn't take a vast amount of effort. It should take very little effort at all, because this isn't you inventing a new brand or a new character. It's just about you spending a little bit more time thinking about how you do want to be seen, because what do you have to give? What do you have to bring to the party? And then having done that, just think, actually, so I am going to talk about myself a little bit more explicitly like that, or I'm going to showcase that bit of me a little bit more next time I meet that person. And that's, that's all this is. It isn't about being someone different. It's just about being a little bit more conscious of you and what you want to get across in interactions with people.
So the interesting thing that we've noticed is platforms such as Facebook are becoming a place which was always for people to kind of socialize with their personal connections. What we're now seeing is that the business world is moving more into the Facebook space, and so there are professional groups that are being created. So I guess the piece around brand and kind of footprint on the internet and all of that sort of stuff, where you've got photographs from Facebook. Yeah. Gone by and all of that, I guess it's having that consistency across the various platforms, because people can now, if they're going to meet you, they may Google you, but they may also then sort of search a bit deeper into your Facebook, your Instagram, and all of those kind of things. And so I guess your personal brand is being true to yourself, but also recognizing that other people, if they look at you, what are they going to find?
Yes, and that's really hard to do. That whole thing, I'm so pleased so many of you Google yourselves regularly, but it's quite difficult in a way to look at what you see and to put it in the mind of someone else. So, get someone else to Google you and get them to talk you through what they're seeing and what that means for them. Interestingly, a couple of things. Sorry, just something you said, a lot of us work for other organizations. Well, I think understanding your personal brand in the context of the brand you work for is quite an interesting thing in terms of, am I in the right place? Because again, if you're living your brand and that is in opposition or a disconnect with the brand you're working for because their brand values are different than yours, then I would argue it might be time to think about what your next move. Being brutally honest, because there should be a certain amount of synergy. There should be a certain alignment. The other thing is, again, how many of us here are parents, by the way, and thus have been homeschooling, in inverted commas, their children? Yes. So I just, one thing I said in terms of the picture piece, so I logged on to Zoom, and while I was waiting to be let in, my youngest son, Archie, has Zoomed with his Cub Scout pack. And I went on and I was waiting, and I suddenly looked and I saw, hang on a second, the little bugger's changed my profile picture. So it used to be me, and it's a picture I used that was taken literally 20 years ago, so it really doesn't look that much like me anymore. But now I've become a frog on a bicycle. So my word of warning to all of you parents out there who allow your children access via your own technology, keep an eye on what you do look like when you're out there in the field, because the little monkeys may well have changed it. So that was my biggest learning just today, as this started.
Reuben, Kay has asked a question. How can she humanize herself to a cold lead?
Yes. I would suggest, I certainly don't have all of the answers. Kay, my I think okay, so a little step back. What makes us human? I guess is the question there. And I think what makes us human is the language that we use, is the way we talk, the way we speak. So to me, how would I humanize myself to a cold lead? Is actually to be like me, to speak like me, not is to avoid the feeling that I ought to somehow be terribly professional when I write, or use those kind of marketing cold lead approach phrases that we've seen 1.5 million times ourselves. And actually to go, hello, my name's Kay. Yep, I'm after your business. Or, you know, so just something that speaks to, because at the end of the day, how would, if you went and met them, you know, you wouldn't, you'd immediately try and get past that formal bit and go, hey, I'm Kay, how you doing? How's your business going? Yeah, what are your challenges at the moment? How can I help? That's how I would humanize any approach, because it makes you sound like a human, not a lead generating bot.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I think certainly we're all becoming much more relaxed virtually as well. I think previously when we all sort of thought we had to come on a video call, there was always, everything was very stilted. It's like the first time you ever record a video.
Yeah,
you feel like you're kind of sort of trying to act, and actually rather than just being oneself. I've got a question that's come in privately on the chat, which says, how would you go about changing an already established personal brand as an expert in a field if you would like to branch out into other areas, but without damaging the existing brand?
Yes, very good. That's a good question.
It's a good question, that one.
It kind of in a way speaks to this kind of how many brands are you allowed kind of question in a way. So one way I would address that is actually thinking about what that brand statement is. So again, if I may use myself as an example, I'm a passionate creative collaborator. That's my brand. Now, I would argue that's broad enough, that's high level enough, that works for any context. So it's not role or job specific. So for me, because it's quite high level, that allows, so my example I always give is, so I'm a passionate creative collaborator. What I happen to do, because I do lots of coaching, lots of creative facilitation, it plays to all of those strengths. And you go, of course you're one of them, Reuben. However, if I packed all this in tomorrow and I decided, easy life, I just want to work a nice 9 to 5, or I want some shift stuff, I don't have to take work home with me, I'm going to go and stack shelves at Tesco, okay? I would argue I don't need to change my brand very much, because I'd still go in and I would act and behave and hopefully come across as a passionate creative collaborator. If I was shelf stacking in the dry goods in the cereals aisle, I'd kind of get chatting with the frozen dudes, and we'd maybe put some things together in terms of cross promoting our aisles or something. Just the kind of person I am. So one of my questions to that, you know, how do you go into another field without harming the brand you've got in the field you're expert in already, is to ensure that your brand is high level enough so it's easier to transfer across and speaks to skills and behaviours at the heart of what you're doing, rather than it being specifically the job itself. So my personal brand isn't, I am Reuben, a presentation coach. I am Reuben, I run brainstorms. For me, it's got to be higher than that, because that does allow me then to keep the same kind of brand behaviours, but across different areas. Second response to that is that I don't think that's a huge problem, as long as where you're going to is still authentic, you can still deliver on being the very best version of yourself, but in that field. And I think then it's about being quite brave and saying, yes, I am that, but by the way, I'm also this, and I can prove myself and walk the talk in both of those spaces. But my point being, in both of those spaces should still come back to your central brand proposition, because that will be about bigger than a particular role or skill set. God, that was a long-winded response, wasn't it? Sorry.
It's a good one. It's a good one. So it's about as much as it's your character, it's your personality, which
yes,
I think Vicky is.
All of that good stuff.
Reuben, that has been so useful. If there's any last-minute questions, please feel free to drop those into the chat. But I know that Reuben has said if anybody's got any further questions they want to ask him directly, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. So he is Reuben Milne, and perhaps you can maybe just retype your name into your screen name there, Reuben, where it says.
Oh yes, there we go. That's me renamed proper. Also, the other thing I've realised is obviously just knowing these platforms, so knowing that you don't get as many letters. So passionate creative collaborator is fine, but you only see passionate creative co. Ditto, Purusha Gordon Motivate. So you gotta find a nice punchy little name for yourself as well. Otherwise, it runs out in people's sight.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Reuben, for joining us today, and thank you everybody
Pleasure.
for coming to another of Motivation in Isolation's events. We have got more coming up this week, and we are publishing our schedule for the next 2 weeks as well. So do please check back on the platform where you signed up for this session today on the Eventbrite link. I think also by signing up through Eventbrite, you're now on our mailing list. So you should also get an email each week from us with a list of everything that's coming up. You can, of course, unsubscribe if you don't want to receive another email into your inbox. So thank you very much. Again, Reuben, we have recorded this session, so you'll all get a link with an email over the next few days in case you'd like to watch it back or to share it with any colleagues, friends. Do remember we hold our our daily coffee drop-in sessions, which are at 3:30 every day. And again, you can just click to join straight into those. We'd love to see some of you there. I know lots of you have come back to our events time and time again. So if you'd like to come and just drop in for a chat with us, we would love to see you. It'd be really nice just to have a good chinwag over a cup of coffee. So thank you again, Reuben, and thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you ever so much for taking the time, ladies and gentlemen. I hope it was thought-provoking. Enjoy, and best of luck with your branding.